For those of you who don't know me, I'm Clint Curry. I'm the district attorney here in Yuba County. This will likely be a fairly lengthy briefing. That's why I called it a briefing rather than a conference. There's a lot to go over. There's a lot of details that you deserve to have, and we're going to talk through the whole thing. So buckle up. We're going to be here a minute, and when a lawyer says that, you ought to be afraid, right? Okay, so we're here today to release the report, go ahead, Ted, on the investigation into the death of Rick David Oliver on March the 26th of this year. And let's see if I have a clicker that works. We do, okay. So, in our country, when someone with the authority of the state uses deadly force on a citizen, that's kind of a big deal. And from the founding of our country, which occurred in, under circumstances where the state abused that authority, we take it very seriously. And we take it very seriously here in Yuba Sutter. And the people deserve to know what happened anytime that someone with the authority of the state takes the life of a citizen. So ultimately, that's what we're here about today, is the death of Rick David Oliver. We've all been very moved at the death of Officer Rodarte, and we're going to talk about that. But the focus of a criminal investigation in these situations is typically on the civilian that died in these incidents. So the way this goes, when we have one of these incidents in Yuba and Sutter counties, we don't ever want Yuba County Sheriff's Office to have to investigate their own shooting, their own employee, when it comes to criminal charges. We don't want that for the Yuba City Police Department or any of the agencies in Yuba Sutter. Why? Because there's a conflict, or at least an apparent conflict. And so for close to a decade, we've done things different here in Yuba Sutter. And that is, we've had a task force. We call it the Officer Involved Shooting and Critical Incident Investigation Team, which is quite a mouthful. I'll refer to it as the OIS team, or the OIS Investigation Team. And what that is, it's led by the chief investigator of the Yuba County and Sutter County DA's offices to give it some independence. And then the investigators come from all the agencies in Yuba Sutter. So when we have a shooting, say by a Yuba City police officer, although they have members on the OIS investigation team, we typically ask them to only do periphery type work, and we let the other agency investigators do the work to give it some independence. So that's the idea. Once they're done with that report, depending on which county it's in, Sutter or Yuba, it gets referred to the district attorney no matter what to review it and decide whether any criminal charges are appropriate against anyone, whether it's one of the officers or one of the civilians involved. So today is my opportunity to tell you about that investigation, the legal analysis that I've done, and the conclusion. So this all starts actually several years ago. This was a multi-year investigation done by Net 5, which is another Yuba Sutter multi-agency effort to combat both drugs and gangs. They'd been partnering with the Federal Drug Enforcement Agency, the DEA, in this years-long investigation into elements of a drug trafficking organization that was moving hundreds of pounds of drugs into Northern California. On March 26th, the DEA and Net 5 had both decided that they had sufficient evidence on the central players of that drug trafficking organization that it was time to bring this particular investigation to an end. When they do that, typically what happens is the main targets of the investigation end up indicted federally, and all of the minor players that are kind of at the very bottom of the food chain of this network, they end up being prosecuted at the state level. So on March the 26th, it was time to bring this investigation to a close, and that was going to involve serving 20 search warrants in Tehama, Butte, Yuba, and Sutter counties. Net 5 has maybe 7 agents on a good day. Clearly, they couldn't accomplish that on their own, and even with the partnership with the DEA, this is a huge lift to do something like this, to bring an operation like this, an investigation, to a close. So it involved over 125 personnel, and 15 of those locations were in Yuba Sutter alone. So one of the targets that day on March the 26th was Rick David Oliver, and he lived at 1720 Kestrel Court. Rick, 60 years old, he'd been a heavy equipment operator for much of his life, was out of work due to an injury, and had quite a history of drug abuse, and was a felon. He had priors for soliciting lewd acts, indecent exposure, unlawful sex with a minor. He had drug offenses. So he was a longtime felon, and was definitely a methamphetamine addict. But the reason they were interested in him on this day is he was also a methamphetamine dealer that was at the very end of the line before the user, between that drug trafficking organization and the users. So we'd call that a street level dealer, and that's a lot of what was getting cleaned up on March the 26th. Was taking down the central actors, and then also making sure that even the low-level dealers were arrested. Mr. Oliver, Rick, one thing that's not in his history, violence. He had no offenses of violence whatsoever in his record. And so when they looked at this site, this location, for the service of this search warrant, it was a fairly, as these go, fairly low risk because he didn't have a history of violence. I'm going to back up for a second to the bigger picture. Again, so the map up here has a pin at all the locations they were serving search warrants on just in Yuba Sutter. So there were 15 locations. Each one had a location number assigned to it and a plan. So you might ask, Clint, wow, how are they going to take care of all those locations at one time, in one day even? It's, like I said, it's a really, really heavy lift because Net 5 itself, even DEA would have trouble hitting all those locations at once or even at the same time period. So what does that look like? It looks like this. Net 5 reaches out to every law enforcement agency in the region. Yuba County, Sutter County Sheriff's Departments, every police department in the region, state agencies, Highway Patrol, California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, the FBI, the DEA, Colusa County Sheriff, Yolo County Sheriff. I mean, you reach out to everyone and you say, we're doing this, we need help, can you send people? And of course, in true law enforcement fashion, everyone says, we've got your back. And they send people, and then Net 5 task organizes those people into teams to do this work. And so on March the 26th in Yuba Sutter, we had 15 entry/search teams designated for 15 locations to serve these search warrants. There were 3 tactical teams, and there were 2 command posts. So just to kind of give you an idea of the scope of what we're talking about. Now these entry teams, they're ad hoc teams. So they're created like, I'll give you one example for Kestrel Court. The original team assigned as the entry and search team was comprised of people from the Sutter County DA's office, the Yuba County DA's office, and the Yuba County Sheriff's office. So you've got a mix of personnel, and then CDCR also had a dog handler assigned to that location. So the task organization is messy, but it's based on location. Each of these sites had a thorough review and safety assessment, including things like I told you. In this case, Mr. Oliver had no history of violence, he had no history of firearms, so although he was a felon, it was fairly low risk. All 15 of these, as they did the safety and risk assessments, they looked at it and none of them met the matrix for a SWAT call out. So a SWAT call out or deployment happens when they've done a risk assessment and the risk is elevated to justify it. So in this case, you had SWAT members present in the community, but they weren't called out as a SWAT team for a SWAT hit, so to speak. They were part of this ad hoc task organization. Given their skill sets, they were assigned together into 3 tactical teams. So there were 2 SWAT teams, the Sutter County SED team and then the Yuba Sutter Regional SWAT team provided personnel to make up these 3 tactical teams. So we'll go back to what in the ops plan was referred to as location 10, which is the location there at Kestrel Court with Rick Oliver. And so the team initially is comprised of 7 law enforcement officers, and these are, again, because they're looking for any peace officers that can help on a day like this. It's made up from people from the Yuba DA's office, because I have peace officers that still work for me. The Sutter County DA's office, Yuba County Sheriff's Office. The case agent, Lieutenant Mercy Garcia, the Sutter DA's office. Great officer. So this was his to control that morning. And so he went out ahead of time. Again, to update risk assessment, to look things over. So he gets there and he sees there's a car in the driveway that's not noted in any of the plans that he's looking at. And so he ran that plate. And that plate came back to someone I'm going to call Witness 3. And Witness 3, who was the registered owner of this vehicle that's sitting in the driveway, was a dangerous guy. Witness 3 had a history of violence. Witness 3 had a history of meeting the matrix and needing the SWAT team to go out for interactions. So Witness 3, really bad guy, really dangerous. Lieutenant Garcia saw that and he said, whoa, we're not going to do a dynamic entry on this. We're going to do what's called a surround and call out. He let Net 5 know, said this is our plan and this is why. So overnight, because this is the day before, overnight Net 5 did their research, checked on things because they were familiar with Witness 3, and they were able to, they were confident after looking at everything that Witness 3 had nothing to do with this house in Olivehurst. Witness 3 may be the registered owner of a vehicle that had been sitting there, but he had nothing to do with the house. And they were right about that. Witness 3 had nothing to do with this house. Rick David Oliver happened to have bought or somehow come into possession of a car that was registered to Witness 3. So Witness 3, not at the house, has nothing to do with the house in hindsight, but at the time, Lieutenant Garcia was really concerned, but Net 5 was confident that he wasn't there. So knowing how Lieutenant Garcia felt, they turned to the tactical teams. And one of the tactical teams only had one site scheduled that morning in Yuba City. It was called Tactical Team 2. So Tactical Team 2 was scheduled to do one location in Yuba City to do the entry. Again, not because it met SWAT matrix, but because we were task organizing lots of people that day to get all this done. So they had the ability to move and then do a second location after they did their first. So Net 5 asked the Yuba Sutter SWAT team, can you, with Tactical 2, provide the entry for Kestrel Court? And they told him, Frank, Lieutenant Garcia believes that, Witness 3 might be there because of this car. We've checked with our sources. We know that he still lives in this one spot and he has nothing to do with this residence. So the SWAT commander was comfortable with that and said, yeah, absolutely, we can do this. So it consisted of 8 law enforcement officers, 2 of which are sergeants that are the team leaders. Those would be Sergeant Trum and Sergeant Mallory from the Yuba County Sheriff's Office. 2 firefighter EMTs are embedded with that team, and a crisis negotiator. And they get to ride in a really big, cool 9-ton truck with all the red and blue lights on it, and painted with Sheriff's Department and all that kind of stuff. And that's important because in California we don't typically do no-knock warrants. We give notice before we go into a residence, and so part of that is showing up and making sure you look obviously like law enforcement. So this huge truck with the red and blue lights, yeah, that's part of it. So TAC 2, so that's what it consisted of, and it had people representing the law enforcement officers anyway. The Yuba City Police Department, the Yuba County Sheriff's Office, and the Marysville Police Department all embedded in that team. So this is a photo of Officer Osmar Rodarte in the back of the Bearcat on the way to Kestrel Court that morning. And I have it here. All the SWAT operators, they wear body armor. It would be completely foolish to do this job without body armor. And it's a little different than what patrol typically wears. A lot of time patrol deputies, patrol officers are going to have a soft Kevlar type vest that's more flexible and is only going to handle certain types of threat levels. But SWAT operators, they wear plate carriers with rifle rated plates in the front and back. They come in standard sizes. Up here on the table you can see Officer Rodarte's vest. If you want to come take a look at it, I'd ask that you not touch it. It's still technically in evidence, but it's up there. And so in the front it's got a hardened 10 by 12 plate in the front, and it's designed to defeat even a rifle round. So that's why they do those. Notice as he's wearing it, it basically stops at the belly button. And all vests do that, plate carriers and regular vests. And you can see why just from this picture as he's seated. If you had a longer vest, you wouldn't be able to sit down without either that vest coming up over your ears on the sides, or in this case, the plate actually being shoved into your throat as you squat or sit, which that would be bad as a law enforcement operator trying to do their job. So they do wear body armor. It's designed to protect them, to cover their vital organs. It's also designed to let them do the job that they have to do, which is to move quickly and secure situations. So he's also, and let's see if I can get this mouse to work, you'll notice he's wearing a body-worn camera, which is up here in the right corner of his vest. And I point that out to you now because we're going to see some of the video, and a lot of times you'll notice it's kind of blacked out. And the reason it's blacked out is because his arm is in front of his camera. That tends to happen fairly frequently. He's armed with a rifle. You can't see it, but he's got a pistol, radio, the helmet, eye protection, you name it. Like, we make sure that we equip our people for the job that they have to do. You also notice the huge first aid bag up here in the front, which again, that would have been our tactical emergency medical services people that are firefighters that are embedded with this team with all that stuff. So everyone is basically equipped the same way. So back to Kestrel Court. So the team didn't find out until March 26th, that morning, that they were going to do this location. So they received notice at the morning, or right after the morning briefing, that we had a second location we wanted them to do, which was at Kestrel Court. They went and they did their first site. And they finished that, and when they did, they moved to out by the Yuba County Airport, where they met with the first team that was assigned and the SWAT team, Tactical 2. They met and they talked about the site, they talked about the risks, they made a plan, They went over everything in a briefing, and then they went to Kestrel Court. And the plan is always in these situations, when you've got something like a Bearcat, is to pull up into the front of the residence and then get on the speaker, on that big megaphone, and start telling the people inside that you're law enforcement, you're there to serve a search warrant, and they need to come out. So that's where they parked. The team planned to actually come through the side gate and not just go to the front door. They thought that that was, tactically sound, and I think it was. So when they go through, they call it a breach, right? They went and they breached the gate, they went through the side yard, and they end up around the back of the house to make entry. And you're gonna see video on all this later, but I want you to understand what their plan was. So 7:49:05, that's when the truck mostly came to a stop and the guys started hopping off of the Bearcat. This is a still image from Yuba City Police Officer Zavala's body-worn camera. You can see the team filing toward the house. So Officer Zavala is one of the last ones off the truck, providing this view. So they go up to that gate, they wait the allotted amount of time while the admonitions are being given on the public address system. And once 20 seconds had elapsed, they breached the gate and went through into the side yard. So this is the team. Again, this is a still image from Officer Zavala's body-worn camera, and you see Sergeant Mallory here on the right, and Officer Rodarte here on the left. So you'll notice he's carrying a huge ballistic shield. And typically, a team like this, they're going to be given one huge ballistic shield, and that guy's job is to provide protection and cover for the person that's assigned to breach the door into the house. So you've seen it in the movies, the guy with the big ram that's going to go up and hit the door, or a hooligan bar and tear it open. But you got a guy with a shield to cover him, because while you're handling a ram, you can't be handling a rifle. So you have someone covering for the breacher, and then you have the breacher, which we're looking at Officer Zavala's body-worn camera here, and he was the breacher that day. I believe that's a radio antenna sticking up in the middle of his field of view, but that's what that is. So they came around the back of the house, and I want you, again, you see Officer Rodarte with the shield, and now that there are windows, notice he's employing the shield as protection, like training, right? He's doing what he's trained to do. Notice this window on the far left. So this is the master bedroom. Notice the window is cracked open. The blinds aren't all the way down. Why is that important to me as the lawyer? It's important to me because it helps me know that the people inside would have heard the loud public address system right out front saying, Sheriff's Department, we're here with a search warrant. You need to come outside. The team members, as they're coming around this corner, you'll hear it later on the video. They're not being quiet. They're not being sneaky. They're wearing full uniforms. They've got the patches. They got all the stuff, right? This is not secret, no-knock search warrant stuff. This is knock and notice. We're loud. We're here. We're coming in to serve a search warrant. So the fact that this window is open, and this is where the ambush is going to take place. This is where Rick David Oliver is going to be waiting for those officers. So he could hear them. He could probably even see them coming. So this is a little further down that back wall. Notice again, right? The second window's open. The slider is open. So as they approach the back door where they're going to make their entry, the whole back of the house is opened up. So good news, when a door's wide open, we don't need the breacher to come with the ram, right? So the guy with the shield has to do something with that shield so he can get his weapon out. And so on the video, you're going to see Officer Rodarte's body-worn camera, which while he's carrying the shield, basically all you're going to see is the inside of the shield because it's covering his camera. But he's going to set it down right next to the door so that he can get his rifle ready to go into the residence. So the first person through the door enters 7:49, 44 seconds. So this is 39 seconds after the Bearcat basically stopped and they started making announcements. So well more than the 20-second standard that comes from case law about how long on a knock and notice you need to give before you go in. And you're going to hear that again, they're not being quiet. So the moment Sergeant Trum is the first one through that door, and he is going to yell at the top of his lungs, "Sheriff's office!" Because again, it's no surprise. We're making sure that everyone inside knows we're there and what we're doing. So here's the layout of the house, it's a fairly small house. If I remember right, it's about 1,600 square feet. So they enter through the slider here at the top of the screen into the great room, and this is one of these modern houses. It's only a couple years old, so it's got the open floor plan with an island in the kitchen. So on a situation like this isn't SEAL Team 6 with lots of time to plan the operation, say on Osama bin Laden, where you know exactly where you're going ahead of time and you're going to take a long time to make your plan. So in these situations, they don't organize it to the point of, the two of you are going to go into the master bedroom and the two of you are going to go into the second bedroom. They don't do that level of detail on these because, one, they don't have time, and two, when they come through that back door, they have no idea how many people they're going to be. They suspect it's only Rick Oliver, but they could go through that back door and find 6 people, and then your plan of particular people going to particular rooms would go right out the window. So that's just not how it works. The way these type of entries work is they have kind of general rules that they follow, teams of 2, how they work, like one guy takes one wall, the second guy takes the other wall. They have these things all worked out and trained ahead of time. So you'll see in the video, the great room's empty, and as they come through it, decisions have to be made right here at this juncture of hallway. Who's going to go which way? And if you watch close, because again, the video moves really fast, you're going to see Sergeant Trum, who's the team leader. He's going to pause, and he's going to signal for the next guy to go down the long hallway. And then after doing that, Sergeant Trum's going to turn left and head toward the master bedroom. So just as the order that people happened to go through the door to get into the house, and some went around the big kitchen counter island, and some went directly this way, Osmar Rodarte happened to hit that juncture at just the right moment to be the guy that would follow Sergeant Trum into that master bedroom. And so I think that might even be our next slide. Yeah, okay. So this is from Officer Zavala's body-worn camera, and it's showing you this moment of time at this junction of hallway. And Sergeant Trum is the far left here. You can see he's already entering the master bedroom at this moment. This is Osmar Rodarte right behind him. And then down, the folks that have gone straight, Sergeant Mallory, the other team leader, and I believe Marysville Sergeant Souza is the one here on the right. But again, they're kind of peeling off, going one way or the other, depending on the need in the moment. So we're now looking at a still image from Officer Rodarte's body-worn camera. And his camera is the one that I use for any timeline stuff. You've got 3 different agencies or more on that scene, and their body-worn cameras weren't synchronized on time. So Officer Rodarte's is the one that was used for any entries of timeline, and I had to make adjustments for anyone else, which I used. They used what's called a flashbang in the front of the house as a distraction, and so that's really loud, and so I was able to sync across and figure out whose video was 7 seconds fast or slow relative to Rodarte. But 7:49:53, again, you see mostly Officer Rodarte's arm takes up most of this. You see a little circle right here. That's going to be the bottom of the handle of his rifle. And then you can see kind of sticking down, that would be his magazine. In front of him, that's Sergeant Trum. So Sergeant Trum's going into the bedroom, 7:49:53. And at this moment, you can hear Rick Oliver say, kind of quietly, "Don't do it, don't do it." So he says that just as Sergeant Trum and Officer Rodarte get into that bedroom, as pictured here. You'll have to excuse my effort at making a diagram, but here you go. So Oliver, they could kind of see him, but not full on because he's standing behind a stack of storage totes. Yeah, I'm going to show you a picture of that in a minute. So you got a dresser here on the far wall with a mirror behind it. You got a big bed in the room, and then you've got some miscellaneous chairs and nightstands and all the usual bedroom type stuff. So they can hear him, "Don't do it, don't do it," but he's behind these totes. So here a second later, 7:49:54. This is again from Officer Rodarte's body-worn camera. And if you look, you can see 1, 2, 3 of these blue storage totes. And then if you look carefully, you'll notice there's a black one up on the top. So stacked 4 high, Rick Oliver was behind these. So he had just said, "Don't do it, don't do it." Sergeant Trum, for the 3rd time since he'd entered the residence, yells, "Sheriff's office." At 55, Oliver says it louder, "Don't do it." And you can see, so again, most of the screen is blacked out by Officer Rodarte's arm, but you can see it in green right here. So here's Sergeant Trum's hip right in front of him. So they're still right there, kind of in the threshold of that room. And they both tell him, and this is what we train our officers to do, right? There's a guy hiding in the corner, can't see his hands, so what am I going to do? "Get your hands, show me your hands." And they both do. Sergeant Trum and then Officer Rodarte, both telling him, "Show us your hands." So they've got a problem at this point. And the problem is that, of course, they can't see him. He's not moving. He's not showing his hands. And so Sergeant Trum, to react to this, he needs to move toward a place where he can get better eyes on Rick Oliver. And so he's going to move toward the center of the room so he can try to look around those totes. But that's going to create a problem for the team. And the problem is you got a bathroom back here. So you got an open bathroom. It's not it's not an arch, but it's an opening. It doesn't have a door. The line for the door here is for a closet that's right across from the sink in the bathroom. But that's a problem because if Sergeant Trum moves into the center of the room, then his back is potentially, there could be danger in the bathroom. So Officer Rodarte does what he's trained to do. And he tells Sergeant Trum, he says, "I got your back." And he moves along the wall to make sure that danger spot, that someone has eyes on it, so that Sergeant Trum can do what he needs to do, focusing on Rick Oliver. So we're now at, I think, 58 seconds. So it's been 5 seconds since they've started into the threshold of this room. So now they're roughly here. Officer Rodarte's checking the bathroom. Sergeant Trum's looking at Oliver. And Sergeant Trum's going to tell him again, "Show me your hands." And then after that, he's going to catch a reflection in this mirror on the dresser. And he's going to see that Rick Oliver is behind those totes. He's got a big revolver. it's pointed at the floor. He's holding it in his right hand, it's pointed at the floor. So at 59, again, this is the view from Officer Rodarte. So you're seeing the door back there that's to that closet inside the bathroom, because he's peering in there to see what's going on, if anything, in the bathroom. And then a second later, Sergeant Trum sees this reflection and he yells, he's got a gun, got a gun. And he does what we train our law enforcement officers to do in this situation. He does what we call it step off line. When they see a threat, if you ever watch training at the range, you'll hear the range master yell threat, and you'll watch the deputy or the officer step to the left or the right before engaging a target. We train it over and over and over. So Sergeant Trum does that. He steps to the left and he yells, he's got a gun, got a gun. And I want to point out to you that Sergeant Trum doesn't shoot Rick David Oliver at that moment. Why? Because it's pointed at, the revolver's pointed at the ground, and this is what we train over and over, right? We're in California. De-escalate. Give a warning. Give instructions. And so he does. He's got a gun, he's got a gun, and he steps left. Officer Rodarte spins around right where he's at, back toward the threat. So at 7:50:01, and again, like I'm going second by second here, but obviously things can overlap 1 second to another. This is the only view we get of Rick Oliver on any of the body-worn cameras while he's still alive. It's hard to catch. In fact, if you just watch the video, you probably miss it. This is one frame. You can see he's wearing like some red shorts, and he's got some white socks on here, and he's bladed toward Officer Rodarte. This is the footboard of the bed, which is kind of unusual. You can see there's like a bedpost here, but the sheet is pulled over the bedpost. Again, most of this is covered up by Officer Rodarte's arm, right? Because he's holding his rifle and he's pointing it. He's spun around, he's pointing it at Rick Oliver. And this is the magazine coming down out of his rifle. So we know that within a second of Sergeant Trum giving that warning and stepping left, Osmar has spun around and has Oliver in his sights. And at 7:50:02, everyone fires. And it's all so on top of each other. I've listened to it at least 100 times. And I can't tell you, like I hear this person fire first or this person fire second. It is all, the shooting is less than 2 seconds and it's all over. The officers have fired a collective 10 rounds at the end of that, less than 2 seconds, and Rick David Oliver has fired 1. I'm going to talk more about the body-worn cameras and Public Records Act requests and what we're prepared to produce under PRA when it comes to video of this. But right up front, here at 7:50:03, as the gunshots are ending, we've obscured, I mean, it's mostly black until you see that Officer Rodarte is falling. And frankly, his children never need to see that. They're 7 and 6. And so I'm taking the stance that balancing the privacy interest of his family and the need for transparency, privacy wins. So at that moment, the gunshots, less than 2 seconds, Sergeant Mallory's in the laundry room, because again, they got to search every room, right? He's going to immediately, and you're going to see his video, he's going to immediately leave the laundry room, walk around, and come figure out what's going on, right? And within 4 seconds, and again, his is one of the ones that's 7 seconds faster than Rodarte's clock on the body-worn camera, but 4 seconds after the shooting stops, this is Sergeant Trum in front of him, who's holding the room, because we've just had a critical incident. So what's he doing? He's holding the room until help gets there. So Sergeant Mallory rolls in there, then 4 seconds. What's going on? What do you got? And Sergeant Trum's going to tell him he's down. And Sergeant Mallory's going to ask, who's down? And so over that period of a few seconds, Sergeant Mallory works into that room so he's next to Trum so he can see what's going on. And so on the left, you can see the suppressor on the rifle of Sergeant Mallory. And the whole team uses suppressors. It protects their hearing. It doesn't silence things. It just makes it quieter so that maybe they won't, maybe they'll be able to hear when they're old people. And then on the right here, you've got Sergeant Trum. So notice the totes, of course, have fallen because some of them have been shot up. Rick Oliver has fallen down into those totes and sent them kind of sprawling. Well, let me back up. So Sergeant Mallory, Sergeant Trum is going to focus on Officer Rodarte with the help of Deputy Lieutenant Kite from the Yuba County Sheriff's Office. He's there in the threshold of the bathroom, and they're going to quickly figure out that he needs to get out of the house to medical care, and they're going to do their best to get him out of that house. Sergeant Mallory is going to move forward to try to help Mr. Oliver. Of course, he doesn't know exactly what he has at this moment, right? He's come into this room, he knows shots have been fired, he knows someone's down. While Yuba City Officer Ernst is covering him, he's going to move forward and he's going to just start throwing those totes, which are full mostly of marijuana. He's going to start throwing those totes across the room. And he's going to find Rick Oliver's dead. They are going to provide attempt medical aid for him, but his autopsy says he dies within seconds. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. But as he throws these totes out of the way, he finds a Smith & Wesson .357 Magnum revolver laying on the floor right next to Rick Oliver's body. And so we're just in try to secure things mode. So he's going to pick that up. You'll hear him on the video, gun, and he's going to set it up on the dresser just so that it's not within arm's reach of Rick Oliver, which is a standard thing that they'll do. So that's the basics of what happened. So investigation, some of the team members were there outside on the perimeter because they were originally tasked with doing the entry at this house and searching this house. So some of them were immediately reassigned to the OIS investigation, and then Chief Investigator Brandon Oakley from the Sutter County DA's office came over to take the lead on the investigation, and he did a really good job. And there's a lot of people we should thank. Yolo and Butte County DA's offices come to mind right away because they immediately called and said, can we send people to help with this investigation? So thankful for that. So the OIS team, they basically froze the house. Once, they call the California Department of Justice, has a Bureau of Forensic Services that includes a field team, and it's CSI type stuff, right? So they roll out with their big truck, and we let California Department of Justice process this scene and collect all the evidence. That is pretty normal for any time we have one of these officer-involved shootings or even a major homicide, because frankly, none of the departments in the area, maybe Yuba City, do it enough that they've got the expertise to really process a scene well. So DOJ came out to process the scene. And they find 10 cartridge casings from rifles. And some of them are right here under the bed. There's one tucked back on the floor down here. There's one in the bathroom. But they're basically spread out here in the front of the room, which makes sense because Officer Rodarte and Sergeant Trum are both in that area when they fire their rifles. So here's a photo from Department of Justice just showing you, kind of what this looked like in reality. You've got shake spilled all over the floor. They're hard to see, but there's a shell casing here. You can kind of see the brass. There's another one over here. These evidence markers are marking them. Another one back here in the bathroom. Another one under this chair. So again, they collect 10. These are the rifles that Sergeant Trum and Officer Rodarte used, and those were collected by Department of Justice same day. Those cartridge casings, the rifles, they get sent off, or they bring them to their lab, and just like CSI, they get exemplar casings, cartridge casings, and bullets, and they do analysis. They do comparison at the microscopic level. And so they were able to tell us definitively that 6 of the cartridge casings were fired from Sergeant Trum's rifle, and 4 of them were fired from Officer Rodarte's. That Smith & Wesson revolver, they did the same thing here. If you look, so this is a revolver. It's not a semi-automatic. It doesn't throw the spent casing out of it. So the spent casing is still here in the firearm, and if you look really close, you can see the dent in the primer from the 1 round that was fired. So again, that's how we know that only 1 out of the 6 were fired by Rick Oliver. Department of Justice also does what we call trajectory rods. And again, this is all, we don't assume what happened going into this. This is an objective investigation into what happened because the public deserves to know. And if an officer ever does commit a crime, they're going to get prosecuted for it. And so we don't assume that they're innocent going into it. We do an investigation. And so that's what you see here. The photo on the right is a pink trajectory rod running through, or actually on top of the footboard of the bed. The round went through and then kind of skimmed a little furrow in the top of the bedpost and then continued on. And in the background, you can see the opening to that bathroom. So given that rod's trajectory, you can pretty safely say that that one was fired by Officer Rodarte. This is the wall behind where Oliver was hiding, behind those totes. So you see 1, 2, 3, and there's a 4th one down here that was much harder to figure out trajectory because it went through a little step ladder first. And that's why there's like some gray splatter because like some of the metal came off onto the wall. But again, like letter D here looks like it's from the direction of the bathroom, whereas C and E look like more toward the bedroom, the entrance. So this is just a sample of the kind of investigation that they do to try to figure out what happened. And based on that analysis, this is essentially what happened. Officer Rodarte spun around right where he was. Sergeant Trum stepped to the left. And Sergeant Trum, when he was interviewed, said that he saw the flash from Oliver's firearm before he fired. But this happened so fast. You're going to see when you see the video. But this is roughly the locations of everyone when they shot. So Rick Oliver had an autopsy performed on his body, and he died from 7 gunshot wounds. Some of those wounds included his heart and lungs. And again, the findings of the pathologist were that he died within seconds. They recovered from his body 11 projectile fragments, and rifle bullets tend to fragment, at least this caliber. They tend to fragment when they hit things. So you don't really get intact bullets. You get fragments from bullets. Those got sent to the Department of Justice. They were able to compare them to examples fired from the rifles that were used. They weren't able to match any of them to the rifles, which is normal because fragments are usually so small you can't get enough microscopic comparison to verify. But they were able to see enough that they could actually rule out one rifle or the other for some of them because of the basic characteristics of the barrel, because they had different lands and grooves, different rifling inside the barrels of the rifles. So looking at those, they were able to say for some of the fragments, This did not come from Sergeant Trum's rifle, and looking at some of them, they're able to say this did not come from Sergeant Rodarte's rifle. So they can't say it's a match because it's too small to get a definitive match. But given that we only have 2 shooters, this tells us that both Sergeant Trum and Officer Rodarte fired rounds that hit Rick David Oliver. The other big thing from the autopsy is there at the bottom, and those are the toxicology findings. So he had a little bit of alcohol on board, but the big one is he had methamphetamine on board. And more than I've ever seen in my career on someone that's not already dead from methamphetamine intoxication. 5,000 nanograms per milliliter. I thought it was a typo initially because that was so high, but we confirmed it, and it's accurate. So to say that Mr. Oliver was high on methamphetamine would be an understatement. He was really high on meth. And I'll tell you, in all the officer-involved shootings that I've reviewed, which I think I'm at 10 now, all but one of them, the civilian subject have been really high on methamphetamine. No one this high, but 1,200 nanograms per milliliter, 800, and right in the toxicology report, they tell us, there's a quote from there, blood levels between 200 and 600 nanograms per milliliter have been reported. People who exhibit violent, irrational behavior. So this is my personal experience from having reviewed officer-involved shootings, is they tend to have that kind of level of methamphetamine in their system, these people that end up being shot by law enforcement. These photos are taken by the Department of Justice at the bottom. They found about 6 grams of methamphetamine on Mr. Oliver's bed along with a pipe. They found, I think it was about 15 pounds of marijuana, but it's not the marijuana that leads to this kind of behavior, it's methamphetamine. So don't let anyone ever tell you that meth is some kind of a harmless drug. When 9 out of 10 officer-involved shootings involve an individual super high on meth, it's a big issue. All right, so Officer Rodarte also had an autopsy. A bullet was a single .357 Magnum hollow point bullet was recovered from the inside of his right hip, like over in this area. That was sent to the Department of Justice. They compared it to an exemplar fired from the .357 Magnum recovered from the room, and it matched. So for sure, the bullet that was removed from Officer Rodarte during his autopsy was fired from the gun that's on the floor next to Oliver when they made entry. He died from a gunshot wound to his lower left abdomen. So that round, probably one of the worst things that I've had to do in reviewing this case and all the evidence is looking at the autopsy photos. And I can tell you definitively that round was below the line of his belly button. It entered in the left flank, but also right there at the front. So it was going from left to right, front to back, and slightly downward, according to the autopsy. And again, having reviewed those photos, it was definitely below the line of his belly button. And why is that important? No one wears vests below their belly button, except for maybe EOD, the bomb squad guys. You'll see them dressed up like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, but they don't have to move fast. They can waddle up to their project and do what they have to do. So that round hit and severely damaged his left iliac artery. And so your main blood artery comes down through your spine and it branches out. They call it the aorta, which branches left and right, and then goes a little lower, and there's an inner and outer left iliac artery. The outer one, I think it's the outer one, could be the inner, but one of the two becomes the femoral artery that runs through your leg. So we're talking upstream of your femoral artery, and in fact, the damage was below or above the split even. So, why is that important? Well, it tells us something. Short of there being an operating room in that house with a surgical team that was briefed ahead of time that they were about to have a patient that had a severely damaged left iliac artery so that they could immediately go in and try to clamp it, there was nothing anyone could do to save Osmar's life. They did everything they could. They got him out of that house. The firefighters, the EMTs, by county, ride out, Adventist ride out. They tried, I think it's 8:45, they pronounce him dead. They tried, but the reality is he, within a couple minutes, had lost so much blood, he was dead. So legal analysis, homicide. What's a homicide? It's the killing of one human being by another human being. Homicides can be unlawful, like murder, and they can be unlawful. So murder is killing of a human being by another one with malice aforethought, but you can have lawful homicide. The case in point, self-defense. That would be a lawful homicide. The evidence shows that both Officer Rodarte, Sergeant Trum, shot Rick David Oliver. Fact, they both hit him. They both contributed to his death. Did they commit a homicide? Yes, they did. The next step in the legal analysis is to look and see whether it's justified. So, Penal Code Section 835A talks about self-defense for peace officers in deadly force situations, and this is what it says. They've got to reasonably believe, based on the totality of all the circumstances, that the deadly force is necessary to defend against an imminent threat of death or serious bodily injury to the officer, so that'd be self-defense, or another, which would be defense of others. So the analysis of that, first off, we just have to point out, right? This is a team going into someone's castle. Number one, a judge, based on probable cause, signed a search warrant to allow that team to go into that house. So they had permission to be there, they had lawful authority to be there, and this is why a lot of those facts I've gone over were so important, right? The big truck, the announcements over the PA, the fact that they're going around the corner of that house being noisy, they're wearing uniforms, they're wearing patches, they're yelling sheriff's office, police department, search warrant, they're doing all the things that they're supposed to do to let everyone inside know, this is law enforcement, we have permission to be here. Which means, under, I think it's Penal Code Section 834A, Rick Oliver had a duty to not resist. A legal duty to not resist. He's supposed to lay down, put his hands up, and let himself be taken into, or detained, so that the warrant can be served. So therefore, the officers in this situation had a right to self-defense. That's number one. And then basically you look at the necessity of deadly force. Did they really believe that they needed to use deadly force in the situation? And then was that belief reasonably objective? And the answer for both is yes. So Sergeant Trum lived to tell about it, and he gave an interview, waived Miranda, gave a voluntary statement, told what happened. He'd seen the revolver, he saw the flash, he heard the boom, he thought that Oliver was trying to kill him or his teammate. Honestly, like, Sergeant Trum didn't know who was in the room with him. He knew he had a teammate in the room, but he didn't know who it was in the chaos of everything. So definitely, he's told us that he believed this was necessary. Officer Rodarte's actions of firing basically simultaneously at Oliver, I think, speak to his subjective belief. And then, was it objectively reasonable? I don't think there is a person in this room maybe in the state that would say it's not objectively reasonable, but it absolutely is. Rick David Oliver knew law enforcement was coming in to serve a search warrant in his house, or should have known, and he chose to lay in wait, hiding behind those totes with a loaded .357 Magnum. And then he chose, even after, right, they get in there and they're show me your hands, giving him lawful orders, maybe 10, 15 feet away from him, dressed in the full uniform, doing things that law enforcement do. I mean, this has been some kind of vigilante group. They're not going to say, show me your hands, right? It's the cops that do that. Why? Because we ask them to for our community. So it was objectively reasonable. So, the conclusion on this one is easy. They're justified. This was justifiable self-defense by Sergeant Trum and Osmar Rodarte against Rick David Oliver. And I'll note that given how high he was on methamphetamine, who knows what was going through the head of Rick David Oliver in that moment, because the literature will tell us that people can be, basically out of their minds. But Penal Code Section 834A, for good reason, says that they know or reasonably should know, because getting high is not an excuse to not knowing that it's cops coming through your door. All right, we're almost to the video. So I want to talk about the Public Records Act requests that everyone submitted for the video and the decisions that we've made with regard to these. So there are two videos that show the shooting. Osmar's is in the room, and it's the only body camera in the room. Sergeant Trum wasn't wearing his that day. He forgot his cell phone at home. He was halfway to check in when he realized he'd forgotten his phone, and he had a choice to make. He could go back home and get his phone, or he could go by the office to pick up his body-worn camera off of the charger. He chose to go get his phone. So we don't have a body-worn camera from Sergeant Trum from that morning, but Osmar's is in the room. There's a second video that shows the shooting, but is not in the room, and that's Deputy Tenekite's. Deputy Tenekite's the last guy in the line for Tactical 2 who stays outside, basically covering the backyard to make sure no one's coming into the house from out there. And his body-worn camera shows those 3 or 4 rifle rounds that come through the wall. So then we've got video from people that are in the house at the time of the shooting. So this would be all the other members of TAC 2. And then there's a lot of people at the scene. So everyone that's in the house, or Deputy Tenekite who's right outside it, you either see the shooting or you can definitely hear the shooting. There's video, there's body-worn camera on some of the people that are at the scene but not going in. And frankly, the only things that would have on it are the medical care afterwards and the aftermath. It's not relevant, and we're choosing to not release those because they don't show the critical incident. But everyone that was in the house, we are going to release video. And so you can see the names of everyone that was in there. So when I say we're going to give up video, what video are we going to give up? There's a case recently out of Roseville. The 3rd DCA just made a ruling a few months ago about PRAs and videos of officer-involved shootings specifically. And so that really provided some guidance for us as to what was due. And in that case, they originally asked, they said, we want everything from the time the officers arrive till the scene is secure. Was essentially what they were asking for, and Roseville PD didn't provide that. They provided a far more limited amount of video. So we're going to do that from the time they arrive. For the people that end up in that house, you're going to have that video from the moment that the truck stops. The case with the 3rd DCA, they talked about post-shooting video often being irrelevant because it doesn't provide context. So all the videos go through at least the shooting. You are able to see what happened, what led up to it. You get the why. And this is, for the public and for transparency, that's what it's, at the end of the day, that's what it's about. Why did these state officials with the authority of the state use deadly force on another individual? There's one exception to that that we've chosen to make, and that is Sergeant Mallory. So Sergeant Mallory, as I went over earlier, he's the first one to that room after the shooting. He's the one who secures the gun. And so we've decided that we're going to release that to you under Public Records Act request. It goes all the way until he's found and secured the gun. I'm going to tell you up front, it's been redacted. There's been a blur put over Mr. Oliver's body out of respect for his sister, for his family, and some of the audio's been redacted. And we didn't try to do anything cute. It's just in some places the audio's not there. And the audio that's not there is Osmar Rodarte. He was conscious for at least a handful of seconds. And he was professional, letting his team know that he was down. And his 6- and 7-year-old sons never need to hear that. So that portion of the audio has been redacted out to protect the privacy of his family. And we've done the blur. So that will, we've got a box or a bucket of videos that will be ready right after this. So you'll have that video. I'm not going to play it, that portion of Mallory's video, because I think it's just voyeuristic. I mean, I understand the desire to see the aftermath, to know that law enforcement did the right thing, and so that's why we chose to release Sergeant Mallory's video through the finding of the gun. Okay. So, we're going to play the video here in a minute. Rachel, if you want to, don't play it yet, but you can start to get that ready. Fair warning, obviously, this is not a video to watch lightly. It's pretty terrible stuff. This is a produced video where we have tried to put together for the public some of the things that you're learning today. It's still almost 8 minutes, so shorter than me. But we'll go ahead and we'll play it. I'll have a few more remarks when it's done.
Go to the slider.
a few concluding remarks, but this time I'll take questions. And I'm also happy at a later time to, go ahead.
Can you explain one more time why Sergeant Trump, correct, didn't have a body-worn camera?
The bottom line is so they keep those at the office on chargers that download those cameras. It's kind of that's just how it works with body-worn cameras. And so he needed to go by the office and before he went to the location where everyone was meeting to pick up his body-worn camera that morning. And he left his house and got halfway to where they were meeting, and he realized he didn't have his phone, and he made a bad choice, and he went back to his house to get his phone rather than taking the time to go by the office because he didn't have time to do both.
With the absence of this camera, did that pose any challenges with the investigation?
No, not to the criminal investigation. There was ample evidence of what happened inside. Would have been nice to have it, of course. That's why we have them wear them. But the investigation wasn't hindered by it. All right, who else? Yes, ma'am.
Hi. So those totes, the bins.
Yes.
Were those that was full of marijuana?
I believe most of them were full of marijuana.
Okay. Can you just talk about the investigation itself, how long it took, any challenges you all faced, and what brought us to where we are today?
Well, it's normally a full-time job for 5 or so investigators for a number of weeks after an incident like this. And then after that, it slows down a little bit, and as we identify things that need to be followed up on, I mean, just to give you an idea, they go through the neighborhood knocking on doors. What did you hear? What did you see? They go and they find relatives of Rick David Oliver, trying to see if there's an explanation. It takes time to get the autopsies done. It takes sometimes a really long time to get the autopsy reports back, which was the case in this case. I don't remember how many months it was, but it was quite a long time before we got the actual autopsy reports. So they're doing a lot initially, and then things slow down. So how do we get to today? A while ago, they finished with the investigation portion, and the officer involved shooting investigation team, the OIS team, they bring me a binder, and they say, here's everything, all the reports, all the body-worn cameras, all the photos, and then I take these so seriously, and we're a small county, I review them personally, going through every last video, every last report. Like there's nothing that I don't see that's part of the investigation, which makes it take longer, and is also just terrible, and frankly, in a case like this, to have to review this kind of evidence.
Thank you. Can you talk a little bit more about how high he was on meth? Maybe kind of break it down or compare it to something for people who aren't familiar with those kind of metrics.
Okay, so it's fairly normal to have cases where people are high, where they're in the hundreds. 200 to 600 is sort of where the medical literature says you start to see irrational violent behavior. 200 to 600 nanograms per milliliter. So 5,000 is off the charts. So frame of reference, there was another officer involved shooting in Hallwood I think it was last year, and I think that gentleman had about 1,200 nanograms per milliliter, which at the time was the highest I'd ever seen. And so this is off the charts. And if you look at the two numbers, the amphetamine and the methamphetamine, that doesn't mean he's taking two different drugs. The methamphetamine number is the meth in his system that still needs to be processed, and the amphetamine is the metabolized part that his body has already processed. So I think that number was in the 500s. So it shows that high a number is indicative of more recent use because the 5,000 is so much bigger than the 500. If someone had used a while ago, the amphetamine number would be higher and the meth lower. But this, yeah, Mr. Oliver was seriously high on methamphetamine at the time.
It's been 6 months from this incident. What's the biggest takeaway you want the community to take from these findings?
I told myself I wasn't going to cry. I want you to pray and remember. You know, Osmar had a wife, 2 little boys, 7 and 6. Obviously, he had more family than that. And he had a law enforcement family. And there are a lot of people that are struggling with the shoulda and the coulda. You can keep Sergeant Trum in your prayers. You know, there's probably not a day that hasn't gone by. He hasn't thought about, what if I'd pulled the trigger just a second earlier? But he did what he was trained to do. You know, this isn't Fallujah, where they can just kick the door down and shoot anyone that's on their feet. This is law enforcement in America. And we value the lives of our citizens. And we expect from our law enforcement officers, they treat people with dignity. And that's why we tell them to try to de-escalate. That's why we tell them to give warnings before they shoot someone. And so Sergeant Trum, you know, saw Rick Oliver with a firearm pointed at the ground, and he didn't pull the trigger. And he did what we expect of him. But that's got to be a struggle. And it's not just him. You know, it's everyone that was involved in this entire operation that can imagine some regret. Like, well, what if we just hadn't done this location? Or the first team that was there who saw Witness 3's car and said, oh, we're not willing to do that. We think Witness 3 is in there. You know, the survivor's guilt is real. It's being, it's real. So, you know, biggest takeaway, Sergeant Trum, Osmar Rodarte, and their team, they did what we trained them to do that day, and they're heroes. Anything else? You can do more in a little bit if you want.
Has this incident prompted any changes to how an operation like this might be conducted going forward?
So, the criminal investigation is the first step. That's my responsibility to decide whether any criminal charges come out of something like this. Now that this is done, in fact, I think Sheriff Anderson hasn't even received a copy of the report yet. Sorry, I meant to email you this morning. And Chief Nebeda. So now that this is done, there'll be an administrative review and also a policy review, because any time you have an incident, not just when an officer dies, but any time you have an incident, you can ask yourself, what could we have done better? What did we do well? What can we learn for the future? And so I know that'll happen, but it's not my role to do that for them. Because again, the scope of my piece in this is the criminal investigation. But that's a good question.
So the 10 shots that were fired at Oliver, how many actually struck him?
7. He had 7 gunshot wounds. And if you look at some of the math, there's 4 holes in the wall, and I'm telling you, he got hit 7 times, and they only fired 10. And some of the rounds probably went through Mr. Oliver before they hit the wall. So the math doesn't work, but it's because you can have some rounds that cause a gunshot wound and then exit. thank you for taking time to be here. We've really appreciated our media market with everything that's happened since March. This has been a really difficult thing for everyone. So we appreciate that you are shining a light on this, not just for Osmar, but also because it's how we function as a democracy. So thank you.